Now I want to talk about something that you mentioned very briefly, which is marketing. So
Marketing.
marketing, yes. So
Okay.
another big part of our listeners are Model UN faculty advisors, teachers, even principals who are starting their own Model UN conference. And I really want to learn from, and I want my audience to learn from what you're doing, because a lot of people are in your situation where they're starting a new Model UN conference, and what they face is that it is there are a lot of conferences out there. So perhaps a reaction that schools have is, oh, another Model conference. We already go to 5. We already go to 7. We already go to 8. Why go to this one? So I'd like my audience to learn from you about the different things that you're doing to position ChoMUN in a different way. And of course, there's a crisis element. But also at a tactical level, how are you going about getting students to enroll? And by the way, here's the plug. We'll talk about it. But the conference is actually next week, July 10th to 12th in New Delhi. And we'll link up to the website. So in case, I don't know if delegates can still register. Can they still register, Ajay?
Delegates could never register, Karen, and I'll come to that in my answer, actually.
Please. Okay, go for it.
Okay.
So tell me.
Before anything else, Chicago MU in India, 2014, was, in a sense, because all the seats have been filled up long back, but the conference still has to happen. It's not a war yet. Was an invite-only conference. That was, as I can share with you, the primary goal of our marketing campaign in that sense, right? It was an invite-only conference. At a time where MUNs are known and, well, in that sense, termed as a success or a failure by the number of people who go to an MUN, I thought it was time that we decide that a MUN cannot be judged as successful or as a failure solely on the number of people who go to that conference, first of all. What people do, and this is a very easy thing to do, is that open up applications. Let's see who all can apply. Everyone who applies gets a seat, irrespective of whether we have a seat or not. Let's just add a seat to get them on board. Or for that matter, people are not able to fill up most of the seats because they have huge committees and then they want all of that filled up. With just for the sake of filling up committees, having large numbers, making money and all of that stuff. But that is something that we decided that we will definitely not do. It was an invite-only conference. It was only 5 committees. Specialized committees, small committees, all in the boardroom format. And to make sure that we don't get a delegate for the sake of getting a delegate. And this is something that a lot of secretaries generally say at Model UN conferences, that our executive board has been decided through a very rigorous application process and interviews and all of that. I think I will be among the first secretaries generally in the world that delegates have been decided in that statement. They have gone through an application process. They have gone through an interview. Almost every delegate who's applied as an individual has gone through an interview. They've written an application on the vision for committee. They've sent in their MU and resume. And only after that, a delegate has been allowed to sit in one of our committees.
Got it. So you really are doing a high-quality debate. So I have a question.
Absolutely. We never opened applications in that sense, and we made it an invite-only conference. Yeah, we'll go to your question before I focus on the other aspect.
Okay, yeah, so that we can deconstruct everything and then move forward.
Sure.
Okay, really interesting. So you're going to get a really high caliber. You have really high caliber delegates.
Yeah.
When you say that you are an invite-only conference, do you mean that you only invited a certain number of schools? Or do you mean that you had a list of delegates that you already knew and you said, we're only going to invite these delegates, or a combination of both? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, okay. So I think something that I've always realized as someone who's organized Model UN conferences is that I think it's essential for every conference to allow individual applicants or independent applicants. People who don't really represent a school because of many reasons.
Of course.
Perhaps the school isn't allowed. There are lots of factors there, but I think there's in some schools, there's some excellent delegates, right? So I think it's important that we get them on board as well. And thus, we invited some of those applicants and they sent in their resumes, and that's how it was. But other than that, there was a specific set of schools that we set, not even a number, only the quality schools. We didn't want to even go with a number of schools. We wanted to go with the quality of schools. And so we invited a couple of schools. almost all of them are on board. Some of them obviously couldn't make it. And well, some of them we had to say, sorry, we don't have seats remaining. I think this is the first time at the Model UN conference in India that this is really happening. I think it's happened at a couple of conferences perhaps, but it's among the first, in fact. So that's how it is. Like, we invite a couple of schools, like good ones, who had a history of good debate.
Got it.
And who've actually gone to, who have experienced more than anything else in crisis committees, specialized agencies. And other than that, certain individual applicants who are, have a good experience and who I have personally seen in committee as either an executive board member or as a delegate, who have seen that this is a good delegate here. Hi, man, this is an invite for our conference. I would really like to see you there. Send in a resume, send in all these details. If you qualify, we'll give you a seat. And that's how our seat filling up process, because I can't really call it application process because no one really sent in registrations. We never opened registrations. It was always invite only. Right.
So,
now, and that is something.
It's a combination then. So people
Yes,
who
it's
you knew
technically
and schools.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So go ahead.
So, so other than that, one thing that I also made sure was, and this is something that happens almost at every conference, I don't know in other places, but definitely in India, deadlines are never something that people respect. People are not disciplined about deadlines.
Okay. I've seen that.
So what happens is that when people open up their applications for their directors and for the executive board members, applications are even taken till 1 month after the deadline gets over. Right. So more than anything else, something that I stressed upon was that I will not even take a single application after the time period that I've set to accept the applications for the executive board. Because more than understanding of the agenda, more than experience in MUNing, I think what is of utmost importance is one's sincerity and one's focus towards a certain project that one picks up. How disciplined one is to really stick to something like that. Because if someone isn't disciplined enough to send me their application within the deadline, then I don't think they will be able to make the background guide in the deadline. I think that is something that they will have a liberty to do. And that is something that I really stressed upon. Irrespective, it's another question that we rejected over 60 to 70 applications. Applications that I didn't even open solely because they were not on time. But obviously, we did take up a couple of people later because obviously, this is I don't know if it's really something that's very prevalent in US conferences, but this happens a lot of times in Indian conferences that people back out closer to the conference, and a lot of times executive boards back out. And in that cases, we've gotten certain replacements. But other than that, our initial executive board design was something that was designed within the deadline. And that is, I think, discipline in the executive board members is something that is of utmost importance to me. Now, there's another not technically a marketing factor, but this is perhaps another large foundation on which our conference is built. That is our venue.
India Habitat Center, right?
Absolutely. So now this is a venue that for all those people who taught me MUNing, the old school MUNers who are all in while working at the Goldmans and the Mercers and the finance commissions and all those people who are doing very well in their lives today, who are the budding lawyers now. All of those people went to this conference that used to happen in Delhi, that used to happen at the India Habitat Center. And the India Habitat Center is perhaps the best venue in the country to hold a conference at.
Why do you say that?
The last time a conference happened at the IHC, it was organized by the Delhi school. And that school had got the scholarship from the UNA USA program. And if I recall well, every year they were funded by either JP Morgan or Lehman Brothers or Goldman or Merrill Lynch, I think one of the cases. Obviously, most of the banks did not remain after a certain period, and the scholarship was cancelled and the MU never happened after that. But all those people who I used to interact with said that if someone has the guts to have a conference at this venue, Ajay, and this is a concept this is a principle in that sense, something that we've tried to eradicate, is that executive boards are actually paid to chair conferences, right? It's a very sad part of commercialization of MUNs. Also, best delegates so that is something that we tried to eradicate with this conference. We're not paying our executive board members, something that I'm very proud of, right? And I'm also very proud of them to actually take up this step, have the guts to do that. So what happens is that all of these executive board members used to tell me if Ajay, anyone's got the guts of having a conference at the IHC, we would be willing to chair for free, because that is the place. See, now there's this concept in Indian culture. I'm sure you worked in India a lot. You know a lot about India. There's this concept of a sthal, or for that matter, sthan. It's basically the importance of the place. That is, when you're carrying out an action, that is, when you're worshipping, you need to worship the gods in the temple. When you're having food, it has to be in and around the kitchen. When you can't possibly study with your books in the bathroom, right? In the same sense, everyone was like, this is the absolute, it's the best possible venue for any sort of a conference. And if someone can actually do a conference at the Model UN, it will be like, again, once, because it's happened earlier, it will be a dream come true.
Okay, so I have a question, Ajay. Sorry to interrupt. If it is such a fantastic place, why do you think other conference organizers hadn't done it there?
Okay, now there are 2-3 things. Again, this is something I was going to get up anyway. A lot of conferences after that conference, Karen, came up with the idea and said that we want to have a conference here, marketed that as the venue, and a couple of days before the conference decided to back out from that venue. They decide, because of the simple reason that you can well as imagine that at that time when the Delhi school was being funded by the likes of Goldman and Morgan, there's a lot of, there's an aspect of financial sources and resources involved there. And that is something that is of utmost concern in that sense. A larger reason why people were not able to do it was because of the financial resources not being available. But other than that, I think that is again an excuse for people not to be willing enough. We and this is something that a lot of delegates asked me, and they said, so will we be refunded our money in case the conference venue shifted 2 weeks before the conference? And I made sure that if someone is like, I would take that as a personal insult. I said, I'm going to do anything in this world, but one thing I'm not going to do is change the conference venue. And that is something that Arun used to ask me in all the conversations we used to have back in February and March. Used to say, Ajay, I hope the conference venue is in order. I hope the dates are not going to change. I hope the venue will stay as it is. Because that is perhaps one of the largest parts. See, obviously everyone's excited for getting Chicago to India. Everyone's excited for the kind of committees that we're having. But they're also excited. There's a lot of wow factors. There's not just one wow factor. There's a wow factor and there's a wow factor on top of that. But I think the venue is one of the important wow factors, yeah. Okay. Something that the Delhi people always thought as the dream venue for a Model UN conference.
And now it's happening.
And finally, after I believe almost a decade, perhaps a couple of years less than that, a conference is happening at the India Habitat Center. And I'm happy that we're able to get that.
So I want to ask you, I want to shift gears a little bit and come back to the question of the executive board.
Yeah.
And how you got schools on board. Because I can think of advisors who are listening, even students who are listening, who want to start their own Model UN conference, and they need staffers. So let's talk about the executive board first. Okay. How did you put out the word that you need that there were applications and spots to be filled? Is it that you already have a connection to the different groups in Delhi? How did you do that? How does a conference organizer get quality people to even apply and even get to know about this conference?
Oh, sure. See, so the model that I used for Chicago is not something that I will advise or for that matter advocate to someone who's starting a new Model UN conference, right? Because I'm assuming they would not have organized a conference before. I have organized a conference before. So I know what I did for Chicago and why someone shouldn't do that if they're starting out a Model UN conference, right? First of all, I'll tell you what I did for Chicago. What we do is that we just opened up, we just wrote on our Facebook page. We had a Facebook page, and after it got a considerable amount of following, we just wrote simply that executive board applications are open. This is what the deadline is. Please mail in your resume along with your vision documents for the committees. And if selected through this round, you will be called for an interview. That was it. I never spammed that post. I never shared it in other people's walls. But that was on my Facebook page, and that's how it was. Okay. It was another thing that people applied because obviously there's certain people who had worked with me earlier. And they thought that, I think Ajay is organizing a conference and he generally does good work in all of that. Oh, modesty, hashtag modesty there. but that's how most of the people apply. Obviously, certain people were excited that this is about Chicago as well. And more importantly, certain executive board people, because I've tried as many old school MU1 as possible. Executive board, that a conference is at the IHC. most of them actually even believed in the first place. And that is why I made sure that, again, I put this Facebook status up that announcing the new date was finalized. Date was the first, and I made sure that I announced you 2 or 3 days later. Everyone would have assumed this is a very rank that he's playing, because it is out of everyone's general imagination, and it becomes an overwhelming factor for them that, okay, it's happening at the IHC chair. And that's how it works.
Okay, so basically,
and people were actually more than.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, so you're saying
I was saying that
you had a network in place because you've organized conferences before, and people were drawn. They knew you. They knew, okay, Ajay is going to do good work, and then you set the venue, and people just went crazy, and they loved the idea of it.
Yeah. Obviously, so Chicago was also a wow factor. These are the wow factors that drew people to apply. But more than anything else, I think a lot of people, obviously some people believe in the commercialization of MUNs who really did not like this. But most of the people who said that they were happy that we actually decided to do away with the principle of paying the executive board members. Some people were very happy. And well, I'm happy that they're on board today because they're excellent MUNs. They're people who I have actually learned a lot from. Right. So on that front, I think there is also, I think, a wave in the Delhi circuit and all over India, in fact, of crisis committees coming up. And a lot of people were actually also very excited, saying that, okay, this is a committee that has been a dream. And I've always wanted to be a part of this. Let's just go ahead and apply for this.
Okay, so there were a number of wow factors then in selling this. Okay.
And why I selected them, and this is also part of the marketing part and the quality part, everything comes into this aspect, is that I've made sure that an executive board is not decided on the number of MUNs that he or she has done. And more than anything else, I think it's the executive board's dedication or interest in that particular committee. So, for example, someone who's chairing the Wall Street meet is someone who is well aware of how finance works. Someone who's chairing the KGB is an expert at intelligence agencies.
They know someone their topic. Of course.
Absolutely. Someone who's in the Arctic Council, he's an expert at law. Who's the girl who's basically going to be Winston Churchill is someone who's will be studying history with war history at King's. So, and these are people who are masters of their own worlds. And that is the reason why they've been chosen. See, perhaps someone who's chairing the Churchill committee would not have been a good choice for a Wall Street meet, but that is not what we want in the first place. I want the best Churchill there is. And I know I'm getting the best Churchill for my committee. That's all that matters to me.
I love it. Okay, so quick question. Delegates who might be listening in or who are not familiar, for example, I didn't know that executive board members were paid. So in
India,
can you give me this is new and I love it. I'm learning about this. What's the range that typically an executive board member gets paid?
Okay, that depends. Do you want me to translate that in dollars?
No, you can do it in rupees. Rupees is fine.
Okay.
I work in India. I earn in rupees. I understand rupees.
Okay, so see, I think it goes from about now it depends on positions as well. Like a chair is paid more and a vice chair is paid less and a rapporteur is paid even less. So I think goes from starts from about a couple of thousand rupees, and the highest it has gone up to is about 10 to 15,000
for the weekend.
For perhaps 3 days, 2 days, or 4 days. That includes background guys and all of that stuff. Obviously, see, on one level, it's also a good thing because people will say that we're providing a service, we need to be paid. But somehow, it's also got a bad aspect to it because I don't really believe in the commercialization of MUNs. And I think that is something that needs to be done away with. Also, in a lot of cases, now that we've brought this up, delegates are also not in school conferences as much, but mostly in the college conferences. And then that is why even the school people want to go to the college conferences is because they give out cash prizes. Right? They give out cash awards. So now I decided that that is something that I'm not going to do. What I will do is that I will spend double the amount on making a beautiful trophy for that delegate. For example, a Wall Street trophy will be that of a wool. A Churchill trophy will be with a victory sign that Churchill used to use. Our KGB trophy is the sword and shield. And I will spend more money on giving them something that is actually worth it, rather than giving them a 10,000 or a 5,000 rupees check. Because I think MUNs are much more than merely a couple of checks or some money on the table, because first of all, money would be forgotten in a week or so. And that is something they'll say, okay, we're spending it on this, we're spending it on books and video games, and that will be forgotten. But that beautiful trophy will be on their shelf forever. And that is something that I believe is the value that is being lost in Model UN conferences. And that is why I've decided that it's not going to be as I'm trying to save money and not give money to people, but I will use the same money. I will use more to give them something better, rather than commercialize this beautiful concept by saying, okay, you won best delegate, here's $100 check. That's not what I want to do.
Right. Interesting. You know, that's really interesting, because I did see it at IIT Bombay's conference that there was a check for best delegate. And I think, like you said, it ranges anywhere between 5 to 10,000 rupees. And I was pretty shocked. I was like, wow, really? It was a foreign thing to me. So I love it. So we've said a couple of things that are different about Indian Model UNs is executive board members are paid. Is that only for the high school, the school level, or the college level? Or
no,
both?
that happens for almost all conferences.
Okay.
Yeah.
Of course, but that's not the case. For example, you were at the modern school. You weren't paid to be a chair. You were doing it because it was a student activity, right?
No, see, for modern school, I was the secretary general. I served in the organizing committee. So that was another story altogether. The executive boards there were paid.
Okay.
Who participated from other schools,
Okay,
like
so
other schools or colleges.
But if you have students from within modern school, they wouldn't get paid. It's only the outside.
No. Yeah.
Okay, got it. Understood. Perfect. And then the other thing that you mentioned is the cash prizes, and you said that that's mostly in colleges, not so much school conferences.
Yeah, not so much as such. Yeah.
Got it. And okay, interesting. I love it. I think I almost want to write an article just about this. So tell me one other thing. Earlier in our conversation, you mentioned that I think it was the committee that you loved, that you simulated, the Wall Street committee that you simulated last year.
Yeah.
You said that you were a non-competitive delegate as a Secretary General. So tell me, or something like that, like you were debating as a chair, but not really. And I've heard that in India, in the Indian Model UN circuit, the chairs tend to play a more active role. So can you tell us a little about that? For some of our audience members who maybe have never been to a Model UN conference in India, and they want to really understand the differences between Western
Secretary General
Model
involvement
UN
in substantive matters.
And
See, first I'll clarify the specific example of the our Wall Street meet that was organized by the Indian Youth Economic Association, right, as a standalone event. Now, that was something that, as I said earlier, was some sort of a dream, right? Like you could even go to the extent of calling it a child fantasy. I will not, feel ashamed to admit that. But what I did was that, and something that I still know, something that even the executive board members at our current Wall Street meet that's happening in Chicago will know, is that this is an idea that I had ever since I started MUNing, and I honestly know that I will be the best person to execute this idea, because there are certain things in my mind that I cannot get across to other people, and I think that is obvious. Just a parent is the best with his or her role. I think in that way, I think the Wall Street meet is something that I will be the best one best equipped to handle as a chair. But something that
no, I guess just to clarify, my question is really, what is the role of the chair?
I'm coming to that.
Okay.
So I really never served as a chair in that committee, first of all. Right. Because I was organizing the entire event, it wasn't appropriate for me to sit as a competitive delegate. So I decided that I will be the CEO of this particular company, and I will debate, and I will increase the quality of debate in that sense, and I will in that sense help other delegates and help myself in debating something that I've always wanted to. So we got certain experts, people who were good with the economics, certain MUNs that I really respect. We got them as executive board members, got delegates to apply for that committee, and we had that committee as a standalone event. It was a very good affair. But regarding chair involvement or Secretary General involvement in substantive matters, I think this is something that is in fact a good thing when it comes to specialized agencies. Excuse me, sorry, just a second.
No worries.
Yeah. So, again, when it comes to committees like the General Assembly or the Human Rights Council, I think executive board involvement should be at a minimum, because essentially at the real General Assembly or at the real Human Rights Council, the people who are sitting as presidents are technically just bureaucrats in that sense of the term, right? They're not someone who are in a position of power, essentially. They're just representatives of certain organization. And in fact, in a real MUN or a real UN meet, it's the people who are sitting as delegates who are really the people in power, as one may put it, the people who have real influence, right? But in committees like, for example, the Churchill cabinet, for example, the KGB, for example, the Indian cabinet, these are the kind of committees where the chair is actually someone who played an active role when the real cabinet really met.
Got
Right.
it. Okay. So what
For
you're
example,
saying
in the
is
Churchill cabinet, Churchill was the one who was actually running things.
right. So what you're saying is that in a certain type of committee, the chair or the secretary general will have substantive involvement, which means that they will make speeches and they will take a decision on how things are going to flow in the debate. Is that correct?
Not take a decision as such. I think the decision is still left to the delegates. Obviously, when something is very severe, the executive board's advice is taken. But I think in other cases, I think there's this concept of guest speakers. I think if you're aware of that, the concept of guest speakers in crisis committees. So I think a lot of secretaries general take up that role and do a certain character, play a certain character as a guest speaker in certain committees. And I think that is the kind of substantive role that executive boards are involved in. Otherwise, I mean, obviously there are background guides that have to be made, crisis situations that have to be developed, emergencies and all of that. So those kind of things are something that I always involve myself with, even when I know that my executive board is more than competent enough to deal with the same. But I think it can only add to the quality of debate. It's never going to take away from the quality of debate, and that is the only reason I think secretaries general involve themselves with the substantive matters in certain cases.
Got it. Okay, so then
Right.
it really depends. Got it.
For example, in if you don't mind me giving this example, like, there was this when I served as secretary general in my school's conference, we were having a CIA simulation. Right. And in fact, what happened was that when I was entering the committee to get the feedback and everything, the chair had stationed 3 or 4 guys who worked as the CIA bouncers and all of that. They were actually frisking me and say, okay, no, wait a second. You have to wait here. It doesn't matter if you're secretary general. We need to check if you don't have anything on you and everything. So obviously they were moving on those realistic simulations. But I think one thing we did that with that committee is that I did a recording. Right. And that recording was that I represented the POTUS, the president of the US, and we had to carry out, it was basically the direction of the president to actually come up with, and that was on the spot completely. This wasn't planned. Debate took a very beautiful direction, a beautiful turn, and they decided, let's go with something like this. And there and then we made a recording. And somehow I could really, and they're like, you can come up with a beautiful way that President Obama speaks in, and you can really not mimic in that sense. I think that wouldn't be a correct term. You're talking about the President of the United States. But other than that, I think I could really, speak in the same voice as he does. Let's just put that as a mild tone there, right? So I spoke in the kind of voice that Mr. President Obama really does. Try to, be inspired by him in that sense. We came up with an audio recording for the CIA people, and then I think that turned out to be perhaps the highlight of the committee. That's where the real turn of debate really took place. So I think it's Secretary General involvement, as in where it's required, is something that contributes to debate. But I think unnecessary involvement, and specifically involvement in generic committees, is something that I will not personally advocate.
Got it. So you're saying, if there's a spark of creativity, if there's a moment in committee where you can add value, then you do that. But otherwise, it's restricted. Okay, fantastic. My last question to you, because we've now been speaking for 1 hour and 47 minutes. I love it. It's just such a good conversation. My final question, thinking about the conference organizers who are listening to this program, and they're thinking about, how do I get schools to come to my conference? And you said that you invited only a certain number of schools. I want to get really tactical, Ajay, so that we can help them. How do you go about inviting schools? Is it just an email that you send to, who do you send it to? Do you set up an in-person meeting? Walk us through that process in the most tactical way that you can, so that our listeners can just be like, these are the 3 things that I need to do.
Sure. See, before anything else, I think before one really decides to organize a Model UN conference, one should go to almost every possible Model UN conference in the circuit, within the region whether it's in entire country or a state. One should try to go to every Model UN conference, that circuit, and try to get to know the teachers or the students who are running their schools or colleges, MUNs, on a personal level. I think if you're beginning, I think that's the best way to go about it first. Something that would attract people is that you can definitely send, mail. The email is one thing, but you can definitely send in like hard copy mails.
Okay.
Right?
Who do they send it to?
To the schools, to the colleges, whosoever they wish to invite.
But is it addressed to the principal? Is it addressed to the counselor? Or
that depends on how every school's MUN society works.
Okay, so you address it to the MUN society, basically.
Yeah. So, like in some cases, the MUN society is not just controlled by the teacher, but it has got direct control by the principal or the chairperson of the school. That's where the letter is otherwise addressed to. Whosoever is actually in command is the person to whom the letter is actually addressed. In some cases, delegates are running their own societies, and there's not a lot of teacher involvement. In those cases, I would say that delegates can directly be addressed. But I think for official purposes, the teachers or a principal's name should be put on the letter. But other than that, I think once that's done, in some cases, you can also go and meet certain teachers and certain delegates and get them to get on board. But something that attracts people is definitely good committees, interesting agendas. Okay. And I don't know whether this is the case in the US, but something that happens here is that the community is a very close one. At least the Delhi MUN circuit is a very closely knit MUN community, and almost everyone knows everyone. So if certain executive boards are selected at a certain Model UN conference, people who wish to apply or prospective delegates in that sense will know that, okay, this is a certain executive board member that I have been chaired by earlier. This is a good executive board member. He's chairing this committee. I'm also interested in this committee. It's got an interesting agenda. Let's try this out. Right. At least that's how things work here. I don't know if chairs are repeated or chairs are actually taken from different colleges or different schools at one school's MUN. But other than that, I think these are factors that play in, these are factors that are very important while delegates are deciding that.
So they already know each other. So they said, oh, this guy or this gal.
To one extent, right.
Got it.
Yeah, that is also something that we're trying to do away with, in the sense that I don't believe that executive boards should be brands. A lot of conferences do, and this is also a negative aspect to knowing everyone on a personal note, is that everyone thinks, okay, this person has done, let's say, these many number of MUNs, so he's the best MUNer out there. I think MUNers, and I think for that matter, executive board members should be much more than just brands. In the sense that if this guy is coming to this committee, this is how this committee will be. I think that is something that shouldn't happen. I'm sure because chairs are not repeated or chairs are not got from outside the school, that really doesn't happen at school conferences. But something that they can definitely do to attract more people is present, and whether they can create this in reality or they can just market this without creating it, is the image of being exclusive. Right. For example, Chicago as a conference is exclusive. It has got 4 to 5 different wow factors. I'm being very honest here. Everyone cannot have a wow factor. It's the sad reality. Right. Everyone cannot have a wow factor. But something that I'll advise is, even when you cannot, and never lie to the delegates, never market a product you cannot sell. But other than that, I would say that one should always have some sort of exclusivity attached to one's own conference. I think that's of utmost importance. Like Chicago has a crisis-only committee structure. For example, Harvard has this concept of having conferences all across the world, Latin America and China, India, everywhere are there. Every conference has got something specific attached to it.
Got it.
So if you can have that wow factor, that exclusivity attached to your conference, I think people will definitely come. And obviously, it's going to be tough. For the first time, it's going to be tough. For the second time, it might be tough. But again, I mean, if you keep digging at the same spot for about 100 cubic meters, you will get oil. There's no point digging in 3 different places for 20 meters each, right? You just have to be persistent. The point is to be consistent to make something like a conference actually successful. And that is not just for a conference. I think that's for anything in life. You're trying to build a company. You're trying to do, social work. You're trying to do some good work for society. I think what's important is that you're consistent. Things will not turn out the way that you want them to in the first go. But other than that, if you're being consistent, you will get the desired result out of it. I think something that's also lacking in a lot of people is the passion for an activity like Model UN. Is because again, when you commercialize something, obviously people tend to lose passion. When you make something as generic and as bland as a lot of MUNs become these days, because there was a time, perhaps about a couple of years back, 5, 6 years back, there used to be just 2 or 3 Model UN conferences in the entire country, Karen, in India.
So it's
And
really
and
skyrocketed.
right now, there are 2, 3 conferences happening in Delhi every weekend. That's the difference. All across the country, something I'm not even going to touch because I'm not an expert in the southern regions. All I know is about like a bit about Calcutta, a bit about the Bombay circuit, a bit about the north. But honestly, there is a Model UN conference happening every week. And that is why Model UN as an activity is no longer exclusive. That is the kind of mindset to change. I'm not going to tell people that you don't have a conference. I want to be the only conference out there. People essentially want to have a conference, and I think they should have a conference. But if they're having a conference, it should remain exclusive. There should be one aspect in which at least that conference is exclusive. Otherwise, there's no point in having a conference just for the sake of my school had a conference or my college had a conference. If you
I
can
love it.
provide something to the MUN community, if it can provide something that is exclusive, by all means, go ahead and organize a conference. But if it's just going to be a replica of something that happens almost everywhere, then I would recommend not having a conference but being a delegate. Because I think that's still the most beautiful thing someone can do. I think even if I was given the chance, I would still call up Arun and say, come back down here and be Secretary General. I want to sit in the Wall Street meet. I want to sit in the KGB. I think still what's important is, yeah, someone who wants to organize it. I think the best way is that to have a passionate team, because an MUN can never be a one-man show, right? As one may say, if I've seen the future, I've seen it by sitting on the shoulders of giants, right? So I think these are the giants that I'm thankful to, because again, if one person is passionate, he can definitely get others to work and everything. But I think for a conference to be successful, everyone has to be passionate,
I
and
love
that
it.
is something that a lot of people are actually forgetting. And as long as we live in a commercialized MUN world, that is something that's really not going to happen. But yes, if you take it as an activity, and not even for an award, if you really go to an MUN to win an award, then there's no point. I mean, you're getting to live the lives of men that you know that you'll never be
Yeah,
able to. People, well, the presidents of the United States, and then there are, well, war ministers in a Churchill cabinet. And all those kind of things are something that we know that we'll never be able to do. But,
I love it.
and that's the whole point. It's another story that people tend to even go beyond those characters. But the point is that it shouldn't be about money. It shouldn't be about awards. It should be about having that experience. And if that is something that you can do, then I think any conference will be successful. And it should definitely not be about numbers. This is something that I said earlier. I guess I am having a conference that's invite only. People are having conferences with 1,000 people. And that is something that I really cannot digest. How is it that people would really want to go to a conference with 200
With so
people,
many people,
all
I
members of...
agree. I love like
I
the
see.
smaller committee.
Yeah,
So
like the General Assembly, for example, 193 people. And one of the conferences had a full General Assembly with double delegation. And there are almost 400 people inside one large hall. And then I can't even understand how people end up breathing in a space like that. But I think what's important is that people do not go around with that mindset. People go with a debate-focused approach rather than getting numbers. And I think if one goes with that kind of approach to come up with something exclusive for the community, then that conference is already successful.
I love it. Thank you so much. I think so. Just to sum up, come up with something exclusive. Come up with something that is unique, that is adding value to the Model UN community. And then, in addition to that, of course, have good committees, interesting agendas. And you spoke about specific outreach tactics. Like if you're new, then what you should be doing is going to Model UN conferences in the circuit. Get to know the organizers personally. And I love that. And I think that is really, really important. Ajay, thank you so much for taking the time to do this interview. We're already almost at 2 hours. I really
Yeah.
appreciate it. I think our listeners are also, they've gotten so much value. Everything that we talked about, from your Model UN story, Chicago Model United Nations, strategy, and then marketing of a conference. If delegates want to stay in touch with you, what is the best way to reach you or the best way to follow you?
They can send me an email,
Okay.
right? That'll be president@iyea.in.
President at the rate
iyea.in.
.in. Perfect. And if they
Right.
want to find out more about Chicago Model United Nations India, where should they go?
The website for the same, obviously we have Facebook and Twitter pages running for the same. But other than that, you can go to ChoMUNindia.org.
Perfect. MUN. And then
Right?
they can check it.
Yeah,
Perfect.
from that they can be linked to the Twitter and Facebook handles.
Wonderful. Well, Ajay, thank you so much for taking time to this interview, and all the best at ChoMUN India. I'm sure it's going to be a huge success.
Well, thank you so much, Karen. And more, I think it's and this is something I should have stressed upon right at the beginning. I think I would really appreciate the kind of work that you're doing, because Model UN as an activity is something that is I'm very personally attached to.
I can
I
tell.
think, and I think on that level, I should be thankful to you that you're actually doing such a great job while promoting this activity. And more than anything else, trying to make it a better activity. Promoting is something that's also something that's important, but something that's even more important is that something that is essential for that matter is that you're actually trying to make it a better activity, right? This is this concept that we came up with, came up in the one of the conferences that I'd been to. It was an MUN council, right? And when and the organizer, right, he's at Cambridge now, and he said this thing to us right at the beginning. He served as like the president of the OC, equivalent to the secretary general there. He said, if we're having a UEFA committee, if you're having DC superheroes, Batman and Superman, and we're having Star Wars Knights and all of that, I think it's of utmost importance that we have a committee that actually discusses Model UN and how to make it better. And we had that Model UN conference. We debated for 3 long days. And it was all the top MUNers and presidents of the societies and secretaries generals from all across Delhi, in fact, all across the country. And we came and discussed all of that. And I think that was something that was as an idea, doing something like that, trying to make it a better activity was something that I really liked. And I think you're doing something similar. I think that you're doing a great job for the same.
Okay. Thank you.
And whenever I congratulate someone, I also follow it up with the best of luck. And whenever I wish someone luck, I always follow it up with a congratulations, because I think the two should always go together. So I would congratulate you and I would wish you the very best with not just propagating Model UN as an activity and not just when making it a better one, but more importantly in all other endeavors in life. Okay, it has been a pleasure talking to you, Karen.
Thank you so much, Ajay. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and thank you so much to you too.